In the heart of New York City, there was a small diner tucked between towering skyscrapers and bustling streets. The diner wasn't fancy. It had cracked tiles on the floor, faded red booths, and a menu board that hadn't been updated in years. But it had something special: character. People from all walks of life came here: business people grabbing coffee before work, construction workers taking a break, students cramming for exams over pancakes. It was one of those places where you could sit unnoticed, blend into the crowd, and watch humanity unfold. On this particular morning, the diner was packed. Steam rose from mugs of freshly brewed coffee, plates clinked as waitresses hurried back and forth, and conversations buzzed like a hive of bees. Sitting quietly at a corner table near the window was a man who didn't quite fit in with the usual crowd. He wore an expensive suit that looked out of place among the casual attire around him. His name wasn't important, but what mattered was how he carried himself, with confidence, sharp eyes, and an air of someone used to making big decisions. This man was a billionaire, though no one in the diner knew that. To them, he was just another customer sipping black coffee and observing everything around him. He came to this diner often. Not because the food was great, it wasn't, or because the service was exceptional. It definitely wasn't. No, he came because he loved watching people. There was something about seeing ordinary folks go about their day that fascinated him. It reminded him of his own journey, from nothing to something, and kept him grounded. Every visit gave him new insights into human behavior, which he believed helped him stay ahead in the cutthroat world of business. As he sat there lost in thought, the atmosphere suddenly shifted. A loud crash echoed through the room, followed by shouts. Everyone froze, forks halfway to mouths, heads turning toward the source of the noise. Two men wearing ski masks burst through the door, guns drawn. Panic rippled through the diner like a wave. Chairs scraped against the floor as people scrambled to get away. Some dove under tables. Others pressed themselves against the walls, wide-eyed and trembling. One woman screamed so loudly it felt like the whole building shook. The masked men moved quickly, barking orders. "Nobody move! Hands where we can see them!" Their voices were harsh, commanding, but underneath lay a flicker of nervousness. They weren't professionals. You could tell by the way they scanned the room too frantically, gripping their weapons a little too tightly. Still, nobody dared test them. Fear hung heavy in the air, thick enough to choke on. Amidst the chaos, one person stood out. She was a young waitress, her uniform slightly wrinkled from hours of running around serving customers. Her dark skin glistened faintly with sweat from the heat of the kitchen, and her hair was tied neatly into a bun. While everyone else panicked, she remained eerily calm. She didn't scream, didn't run, didn't even flinch when one of the robbers pointed his gun in her direction. Instead, she simply raised her hands slowly, palms open, showing she meant no harm. Her composure was striking. In a room full of fear and confusion, she stood like a rock, unshaken. When one of the robbers barked at her to hand over the cash register, she nodded once, turned, and did exactly as instructed. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, almost graceful. Even the robbers seemed taken aback by her lack of resistance. They exchanged glances, unsure whether to trust her calmness or be suspicious of it. But they took the money she handed over without incident and moved on to their next target. The billionaire watched all of this unfold from his seat. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the waitress. There was something extraordinary about her. Most people would have crumbled under such pressure, yet she handled herself with remarkable poise. It wasn't just bravery, it was something deeper, something innate. Who was she? What made her different? These questions swirled in his mind as the robbery dragged on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the robbers stuffed wads of cash into duffel bags and bolted out the door. Silence fell over the diner, broken only by the sound of distant sirens growing louder. Slowly, people began to emerge from their hiding spots, shaken but alive. The waitress stayed where she was, standing behind the counter, her chest rising and falling steadily as if nothing unusual had happened. She glanced at the shattered glass on the floor, then at the frightened faces around her, and let out a soft sigh. It was then that the billionaire decided he needed to know more about her. Something about the way she carried herself, the quiet strength she exuded, intrigued him beyond measure. Little did he know, this chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, the billionaire arrived at a sleek office building in the heart of Manhattan. It wasn't his usual corporate headquarters, but a smaller, quieter space he used for brainstorming and strategy sessions. He had spent the night refining his plan, jotting down notes, and mapping out how best to guide the waitress toward her dream. For him, this was more than just an investment. It was a chance to remind himself why he had started chasing success in the first place. Back then, he'd been fueled by passion and purpose, not just profit margins. Now, as he prepared to meet her for their first official working session, he felt a spark of excitement he hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, the waitress woke up early, her stomach fluttering with nerves. She got her daughter ready for school, packed her lunchbox with care, and kissed her goodbye before heading out. The weight of yesterday's conversation pressed heavily on her mind. Was she really about to embark on something this big? Could she trust him? And most importantly, could she pull it off? Despite the doubts swirling in her head, she reminded herself of one thing: she had survived worse. If she could handle a chaotic diner during a robbery, she could certainly face whatever challenges lay ahead. They met at a cozy cafe near her apartment, a neutral spot where they could talk freely without distractions. He greeted her warmly, his demeanor relaxed yet focused. "Morning," he said with a smile. "Ready to get started?" She nodded, clutching her notebook tightly. "As ready as I'll ever be." Over steaming cups of coffee, they dove into the details. He began by asking questions, lots of them. What kind of atmosphere did she envision for her cafe? Who was her target audience? Did she have any ideas for branding or menu offerings? At first, she hesitated, unsure if her thoughts were good enough. But as he listened intently, nodding and encouraging her to elaborate, she grew more confident. Slowly, her vision began to take shape. "I want it to feel like home," she explained, her voice growing stronger. "Not fancy or pretentious, just comfortable. Like a place where people can come after a long day and feel like they belong. Maybe we could even host events, poetry nights, art shows, stuff like that." He leaned back in his chair, impressed. "That's a great start. A welcoming vibe is key. People don't just go to cafes for coffee, they go for connection. Let's build on that." From there, they moved on to practical matters. They discussed potential locations, keeping in mind foot traffic, rent costs, and accessibility. He pulled out his laptop and showed her data on neighborhoods that matched her vision, highlighting areas with growing communities and untapped markets. She listened carefully, absorbing every detail. When he suggested using technology to streamline operations, like an app for mobile ordering or loyalty programs, her eyes widened with excitement. "I never thought about that," she admitted. "It sounds amazing, but also kind of overwhelming." "It's okay to feel that way," he reassured her. "We're building something from scratch here. Overwhelm is part of the process. But remember, you're not doing this alone. We'll tackle each step together." Over the next few weeks, their meetings became routine. Sometimes they gathered at his office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in scribbles and sticky notes. Other times, they explored empty storefronts, imagining how each space could transform into her dream cafe. Each interaction brought them closer, not just as mentor and mentee, but as partners united by a shared goal. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt, frustration, and sheer exhaustion. One afternoon, while reviewing financial projections, she slumped forward, resting her forehead on the table. "This feels impossible," she muttered. "How am I supposed to make sense of all these numbers?" "I'm not cut out for this." He placed a hand on her shoulder, his tone firm but kind. "You are. Look at everything you've already overcome. This is no different. Sure, it's challenging, but so is life. You've proven time and again that you can handle hard things. Trust me, and trust yourself." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she gave him a small smile. "Thanks. I needed to hear that." As months passed, the project gained momentum. With his guidance, she learned how to create business plans, pitch ideas to potential investors, and navigate the complexities of permits and licenses. He introduced her to a network of professionals who offered advice and support, from interior designers who helped bring her vision to life to marketing experts who crafted campaigns to attract customers. Through it all, her determination never wavered. Even when late-night study sessions left her drained or unexpected setbacks tested her patience, she pushed through, driven by the hope of seeing her dream become reality. Their partnership wasn't without its challenges, though. Some people questioned his motives, whispering behind closed doors. Was he using her story for publicity? Others doubted her ability to succeed, assuming she lacked the experience to run a business. But neither paid much attention to the critics. They knew what they were building went beyond headlines or skepticism. It was about proving that resilience and hard work could lead to extraordinary outcomes. One evening, as they reviewed blueprints for the cafe's layout, she paused and looked at him. Earnest life isn't always fair, but moments like these remind us that sometimes it can be beautiful. He smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. In helping her, he had rediscovered a piece of himself he thought he'd lost, the belief that success wasn't just about wealth, but about impact. Together, they were creating something far greater than either of them could have achieved alone. Little did they know, their journey was only beginning. The real test would come when the doors of her cafe finally opened, and the world watched to see if dreams born in chaos could truly flourish. 2 years after the cafe's opening, resilience had grown into something far bigger than anyone could have predicted. What started as a small neighborhood spot had blossomed into a chain of 5 locations spread across different states. Each cafe carried the same warmth and spirit as the original, but they also reflected the unique culture of their respective communities. In Chicago, the walls were adorned with vibrant murals created by local artists. In Atlanta, live jazz performances filled the air every Friday evening. And in Los Angeles, a garden patio offered customers a peaceful escape from the city's hustle. The success of resilience wasn't just measured in numbers. It was written on the faces of the people it touched. Hundreds of employees found stable jobs at the cafes, many of whom came from backgrounds similar to hers. Single parents, students, and individuals struggling to make ends meet discovered not only employment, but also mentorship and support. The cafe became more than a workplace. It became a stepping stone for dreams. Employees were encouraged to pursue their passions, whether that meant taking art classes, learning new skills, or starting side businesses of their own. It was a ripple effect of empowerment that extended far beyond the doors of any one location. Her journey had transformed her too. Once a shy waitress juggling multiple jobs to survive, she now stood confidently at the forefront of a movement. Media outlets dubbed her the accidental Tycoon, though she preferred the term dreamer-turned-doer. She traveled frequently, speaking at conferences and sharing her story with audiences eager to learn how she turned adversity into opportunity. But despite the accolades and attention, she remained grounded. Whenever reporters asked about her secret to success, she always gave the same answer: resilience. "It's not about being fearless," she'd say during interviews. "It's about moving forward even when you're scared. Life throws curveballs, but if you keep showing up, good things will happen." For him, the billionaire who had taken a chance on her, the impact was equally profound. His foundation had grown exponentially, funding dozens of startups led by underrepresented entrepreneurs. He stepped back from his corporate empire, dedicating himself fully to nurturing talent and breaking down barriers that had long stifled innovation. People began referring to him not as a businessman, but as a visionary, a man who used his wealth and influence to create lasting change. Yet he never sought credit for his efforts. To him, this was simply the natural evolution of a life once consumed by ambition and now guided by purpose. Their partnership continued to thrive, built on mutual respect and shared values. They weren't just collaborators anymore. They were friends, bound together by the lessons they'd learned along the way. One evening, as they sat in the original Brooklyn cafe sipping coffee, he turned to her and said, "You know, I think we've only scratched the surface. Imagine what else is possible." She smiled, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "I don't need to imagine it. I see it every day, here, in the lives we've changed, in the stories people tell. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning." And he believed her. The culmination of their journey came when they were invited to speak together at a TED Talk event. The theme was From Chaos to Creation, and thousands gathered to hear their story. As they walked onto the stage, hand-picked quotes from their interviews scrolled across massive screens behind them. The room erupted in applause, but both looked calm, almost serene, as if they belonged there. She spoke first, recounting the robbery that brought them together. That day changed my life, not because of what happened, but because of how I chose to respond. Staying calm under pressure taught me something important. Fear doesn't define you. Action does. When it was his turn, he picked up where she left off. Her courage inspired me to rethink my own definition of success. For years, I chased profits without considering the human element. Then I met someone who reminded me why business matters: to connect, to uplift, to transform. Together, they painted a picture of resilience, not just as an individual trait, but as a collective force capable of reshaping industries and communities. By the time they finished speaking, the audience was on its feet, cheering loudly. Some wiped away tears, moved by their authenticity and vulnerability. Others scribbled notes, determined to carry the message forward in their own lives. Backstage after the talk, reporters swarmed them with questions. How did they manage to achieve so much? What advice would they give to others hoping to follow in their footsteps? Through it all, they stayed humble, deflecting praise onto the countless individuals who had contributed to their success. "This isn't our story," she told one journalist. "It's everyone's story. We're just lucky to be part of it." In the months that followed, Resilience continued to expand, while his foundation reached even greater heights. Their collaboration sparked conversations worldwide about equity, entrepreneurship, and the power of second chances. Schools incorporated their story into curriculums, teaching students that no dream is too big if you're willing to work for it. Entrepreneurs cited them as role models, proving that success isn't reserved for the privileged few. It's accessible to anyone with grit and heart. But perhaps the most beautiful outcome was the bond they shared. Neither had expected to find a friend in the other, yet their partnership grew deeper with each passing year. They celebrated milestones together: the launch of new cafes, the graduation of mentees, and leaned on each other during tough times. When setbacks arose, as they inevitably did, they faced them as a team, reminding themselves of the lessons they'd learned early on. Stay calm, stay focused, and trust the process. Looking back, neither could pinpoint the exact moment their lives intertwined so completely. Was it the robbery? The first meeting? The late-night brainstorming sessions? Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was the legacy they were building. A legacy rooted in resilience, compassion, and the belief that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. As she stood outside the newest Resilience location one crisp autumn morning, watching customers stream inside, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. This journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every step. Turning to him, she said softly, "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." He smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, thank you. You reminded me why I started this whole crazy ride in the first place." And with that, they walked into the cafe together, ready to face whatever came next. Because resilience isn't just about surviving chaos, it's about creating something beautiful from it. And in doing so, they had changed not only their own lives, but the world around them. The chaos in the diner slowly began to settle as police officers arrived, their boots thudding against the tiled floor. They moved methodically, securing the scene, asking questions, and taking statements from shaken patrons and staff. Outside, curious onlookers gathered, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of what had happened. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with relief, but still tinged with unease. People hugged each other tightly, grateful to be alive, while others sat quietly, staring blankly into space, trying to process the ordeal. Amidst all this, the billionaire remained seated at his corner table, sipping his now cold coffee. He hadn't left yet, not because he was waiting for the police to question him, they'd already noted his statement, but because he couldn't stop thinking about the waitress. She was busy cleaning up broken glass near the counter, her movements calm and efficient despite everything that had just unfolded. Her hands didn't shake. Her expression didn't falter. She simply worked, sweeping shards into a dustpan and tossing them into a trash bin. To anyone else, she might have seemed like just another employee doing her job, but to him, she was something more, a puzzle he couldn't ignore. When the diner finally started to empty out, he made his move. He approached her cautiously, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice carrying a hint of curiosity. She looked up, surprised to see someone addressing her so directly after such a chaotic morning. For a moment, they locked eyes, his sharp and calculating, hers steady and guarded. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he continued, gesturing toward the mess around them. "But I wanted to say, you handled yourself incredibly well back there." She blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments weren't exactly common in her line of work, especially not from strangers dressed in expensive suits. Thanks," she replied, her tone polite but wary. "I guess I've learned to stay calm when things get tough." "That's quite a skill," he said, nodding thoughtfully. "Not everyone can do that. Can I ask, how did you manage it?" She hesitated, glancing down at the broom in her hands. Talking about herself wasn't something she did often, especially not with customers. But there was something genuine about the way he asked. No judgment, no pressure, just honest interest. So she decided to answer. "I don't know," she admitted with a shrug. "Maybe it's because I've been through worse. Or maybe it's because panicking doesn't help anyone. Either way, I figured staying calm was better than losing my head." Her words struck a chord with him. There was wisdom in her simplicity, a depth that went beyond her years. He leaned against the counter, studying her carefully. "You're right, it doesn't help anyone. But staying calm under pressure? That takes guts. And discipline." For the first time since the robbery, a faint smile crossed her face. "Well, it's either that or cry later," she joked lightly, though there was truth in her humor. "Besides, crying doesn't pay the bills." That comment piqued his interest even further. "Speaking of bills," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Do you mind if I ask what you do outside of here? This can't be your only job, can it?" She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Nope, definitely not. I've got 2 other gigs, cleaning offices late at night and tutoring kids on weekends. And I'm also taking classes online, trying to finish my degree in business administration." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Business administration? That's impressive." "Thanks," she replied, her voice tinged with pride. "It's not easy juggling everything, but I've got goals. One day, I want to open my own cafe, a place where people feel welcome no matter who they are or where they come from. Somewhere cozy, you know, a spot where folks can sit down, relax, and maybe even dream a little." Her passion was unmistakable. As she spoke, her eyes lit up, and her voice carried a quiet determination that resonated deeply with him. He found himself leaning forward, hanging on to every word. "And what happens if those dreams don't work out?" he asked, genuinely curious. "They will," she said firmly, without hesitation. "They have to. I've worked too hard to let them slip away now." Her conviction left him speechless. Here was someone who had faced adversity head-on, who refused to let circumstances dictate her future. It reminded him of his own journey. The sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the relentless drive to succeed. He felt a strange kinship with her, despite their vastly different worlds. After a brief pause, he cleared his throat. "Listen, I don't mean to pry, but I think you're on to something with this idea of yours. Opening a cafe isn't easy, though. Have you thought about funding? Resources? Mentorship?" She laughed nervously, running a hand through her hair. "Honestly? Not really. I figure I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Right now, I'm just focused on surviving day by day." He nodded, understanding her perspective. Then, after a moment of contemplation, he said, "What if I told you I could help?" Her jaw dropped slightly. "Help? With what?" "With your cafe," he explained, his tone measured but sincere. "I run a few companies myself, and I know a thing or two about building businesses. If you're serious about this dream, I'd like to offer my support. Funding, guidance, connections, you name it." She stared at him, stunned. For a second, she wondered if this was some kind of prank or scam. Strangers didn't walk into diners offering life-changing opportunities out of the blue. But looking into his eyes, she saw no deception, only sincerity. I don't know what to say," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "Let's call it an investment," he replied with a small smile. "In talent, potential, and resilience. Those are qualities money can't buy, and you've got them in spades. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly, unwilling to let her emotions show. This is insane. Are you sure about this? I wouldn't have offered if I wasn't, he assured her. But there's one condition: I want to document your journey. Not for publicity, but to inspire others. Too many people give up on their dreams because they think they're alone in the struggle. Your story could change that. She took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, one that could catapult her closer to her goals. But it also came with risks. What if she failed? What if she disappointed him? Still, something inside her whispered that she couldn't pass this up. Sometimes life throws chances your way and you have to take them, no matter how terrifying they seem. Okay, she said finally, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. I'll do it, he smiled, extending his hand. Good. We'll start tomorrow. As they shook hands, neither of them realized the magnitude of what they were stepping into. For her, it was the beginning of a journey she'd always dreamed of, but never dared to imagine. For him, it was a chance to rediscover the humanity he'd almost forgotten in the pursuit of success. Together, they were about to embark on a path that would test their limits, challenge their beliefs, and ultimately redefine their lives in ways neither could predict. That evening, as the city lights flickered to life, the billionaire sat alone in his penthouse overlooking Manhattan. The sprawling skyline stretched before him, glittering like a sea of stars. Yet his mind wasn't on the view. It was on the woman he'd met earlier. He replayed their conversation in his head, marveling at her courage and determination. There was something raw and real about her, something that reminded him why he'd fallen in love with entrepreneurship in the first place. The thrill of creating something meaningful from nothing. He pulled out his phone and opened a notes app, jotting down ideas. By the time midnight rolled around, he had sketched out a rough plan. First, they'd need to solidify her vision. What exactly did she want her cafe to represent? Comfort, community, opportunity? Next, they'd tackle the practicalities: location scouting, branding, budgeting. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready for the challenge. After years of focusing solely on profits, this felt like a chance to build something with heart. Meanwhile, across town, the waitress lay awake in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. Her daughter slept soundly in the next room, blissfully unaware of the monumental decision her mother had made earlier that day. Thoughts raced through her mind. Was she being reckless, foolish, or was this the break she'd been praying for? She thought about her late-night shifts, the endless cups of instant noodles, the countless hours spent studying while her daughter played nearby. All those sacrifices, they had to count for something, right? Finally, exhaustion overtook her and she drifted off to sleep. In her dreams, she saw a warm, inviting cafe filled with laughter and chatter. People of all ages and backgrounds gathered around tables, sharing stories, exchanging smiles. She stood behind the counter, welcoming newcomers, watching her dream come to life. When she woke up the next morning, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it, one step at a time. The day finally arrived. After months of planning, late-night meetings, and countless cups of coffee, the cafe was ready to open its doors. It stood on a quiet street corner in Brooklyn, nestled between a bookstore and a flower shop. The sign above the entrance read, "Resilience," in bold, golden letters, a name chosen not just for its meaning, but for the journey it represented. Inside, the space glowed with warmth. Soft lighting bathed the walls, painted in earthy tones. Mismatched furniture invited cozy conversations, and shelves lined with books offered a touch of home. Every detail reflected her vision: comfort, community, and hope. On opening day, she woke up before sunrise, her heart racing with anticipation. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel confident yet approachable, a simple blouse paired with jeans and sneakers. Her daughter, now old enough to understand the significance of the moment, hugged her tightly. "You've got this, Mom," she whispered. Those 4 words carried more weight than anything else she'd heard that morning. When she arrived at the cafe, a small crowd had already gathered outside. Word had spread quickly thanks to social media campaigns and local buzz generated by friends and family who believed in her dream. As she unlocked the door and stepped inside, she took a deep breath, letting the scent of freshly brewed coffee fill her lungs. This was it, the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. He was there too, standing near the counter, watching as she greeted the first customers. He had played a crucial role in bringing this place to life, but today wasn't about him. It was about her, and the community she hoped to build within these four walls. Still, he couldn't help but feel proud. Watching her move through the cafe, welcoming strangers with genuine smiles and kind words, he saw the same calm strength she had shown during the robbery all those months ago. Only now it wasn't fearlessness born out of necessity. It was confidence earned through perseverance. By mid-morning, the cafe buzzed with activity. Patrons filled every seat, sipping lattes and nibbling on pastries while chatting animatedly. Some came alone, seeking solace in a quiet corner. Others arrived in groups, laughing and sharing stories. A young mother sat by the window, nursing a cup of tea while her toddler played with toys provided for kids. An elderly couple lingered over slices of cake, reminiscing about their youth. Each person added something unique to the atmosphere, turning the cafe into exactly what she had envisioned, a haven where everyone belonged. But it wasn't just the customers who noticed the magic of the place. Local journalists stopped by, intrigued by the story behind the cafe's creation. They interviewed her, asking how she managed to turn her dream into reality despite the odds stacked against her. She spoke openly about her struggles, working multiple jobs, raising a child as a single parent, and pursuing education while juggling responsibilities. But she also emphasized the support she received along the way, particularly from the man who had taken a chance on her. "He didn't just give me money," she told one reporter, gesturing toward him as he stood nearby. "He gave me belief. Belief that I could do this even when I doubted myself." Her words resonated deeply with readers. Articles about resilience began appearing in newspapers and online platforms, painting her as a symbol of grit and determination. People started referring to her as the accidental entrepreneur, though she laughed off the title. To her, there was nothing accidental about it. Every step she took was deliberate, fueled by a desire to create something meaningful, not just for herself, but for others like her. As weeks turned into months, the cafe became more than just a business. It evolved into a hub for the neighborhood, hosting events that brought people together. Poetry readings drew crowds eager to share their words. Art exhibits showcased works by local creators. Even workshops on financial literacy and career development found a home there, thanks to partnerships with organizations dedicated to uplifting underserved communities. The cafe wasn't just serving coffee, it was serving opportunity. Meanwhile, he used the success of resilience to launch a broader initiative aimed at supporting minority entrepreneurs. Inspired by her journey, he founded a foundation offering grants, mentorship programs, and resources to individuals striving to build businesses despite systemic barriers. His public image shifted dramatically, from ruthless corporate titan to compassionate advocate for change. Critics who once accused him of exploiting her story fell silent as they witnessed the tangible impact of his efforts. Together, they proved that collaboration could spark transformation far beyond what either of them had imagined. Yet not everything was smooth sailing. Success brought challenges of its own. As resilience gained popularity, some questioned whether the cafe had strayed too far from its humble roots. One critic wrote an article accusing her of selling out, claiming that the influx of trendy decor and upscale menu items alienated the very community she claimed to serve. Others wondered if she truly understood the complexities of running a sustainable business, or if she was simply riding the wave of goodwill generated by her backstory. She read the criticisms carefully, absorbing each word without reacting defensively. Then, she addressed them head-on during a community meeting held at the cafe. Standing in front of a packed room, she acknowledged the concerns while reaffirming her commitment to staying true to her values. "Yes, we've grown," she admitted. "But growth doesn't mean forgetting where you came from." Everything we do here is rooted in the same principles that brought us here: inclusivity, resilience, and love. Her honesty won over skeptics, solidifying her reputation as a leader worth following. Even those who had initially doubted her abilities came around, recognizing the authenticity behind her actions. For him, the experience was transformative. Helping her achieve her dream reignited a passion he thought he'd lost, a passion for creating opportunities rather than merely accumulating wealth. He began spending less time in boardrooms and more time mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs, listening to their stories and learning from their perspectives. In doing so, he discovered a sense of fulfillment that no balance sheet could measure. As the year drew to a close, Resilience celebrated its first anniversary. The event was modest, yet heartfelt, attended by regulars, friends, and supporters who had cheered her on from the beginning. She stood at the center of the room, holding a microphone as she thanked everyone for believing in her when she barely believed in herself. Her voice trembled slightly, but her gratitude shone brightly. "I never dreamed this little cafe would grow into what it is today," she said, looking around at the faces smiling back at her. "But none of this would have been possible without the people who walked alongside me, my family, my team, and especially—" She paused, turning to him. "The person who saw potential in me when I didn't see it in myself." Applause erupted, filling the space with warmth and appreciation. For both of them, it was a moment of validation, not because of the recognition, but because of the lives they had touched along the way. What neither of them realized, however, was that their journey was far from over. The seeds they had planted were beginning to sprout, spreading roots deeper than either of them could have anticipated. And soon, the world would witness just how powerful resilience could be when paired with purpose.